What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back in the video. It's already week 7, which means we do get Rashid Rice back this week, but also kind of the heart of bye weeks is almost here. In week 7, I think we only have 2 teams on bye, but 6 teams go on bye in week 8, another 4 in both weeks 9 and 10. So while it's kind of like an average week for the waiver wire, you need to look ahead and just see how many teams or how many players you have on bye in weeks 8, 9, and 10, and just see if you're going to kind of get like decimated in any of those weeks. We only have like one big name to go over on the waiver wire, but there are a lot of players in that like 1% to 3% of your fab range, maybe worth spending like a 4, 5, 6 claim on, or just players maybe you can add. And maybe you wouldn't normally consider them, but you might need to if you've got like in week 8, 6 players on bye, and you know for a fact you're going to need multiple players to fill in that role. So the obvious name at the top is Kimani Vidal. This one is a little bit annoying because all the reporting Sunday morning indicated that Haskins was going to be starting, he was going to be the lead back for carries, and that Vidal would more just mix in. And that wasn't totally wrong to start the game. On the Chargers' first 2 drives, Haskins 2 carries, 2 yards, and a 9-yard reception. Vidal 3 carries, 3 yards, and a 6-yard reception. So it was very much, a near 50-50 split that we were basically expecting heading into the weekend. After that, though, Haskins, 1 more touch over the next 3 drives, only 4 total touches for the remainder of the game after that, finishes 6 carries, 14 yards, that 1 9-yard reception. Vidal, meanwhile, 138 yards and a touchdown on 21 touches. I tried to look even after the game. I didn't see any reporting on like a reason for Haskins getting benched besides just playing bad. And it was something we talked about last week, being like, it kind of seems like he's going to be the lead guy, or it seems like it's going to be 50-50, but Haskins has never been a good running back in the NFL, and there have at least been glimpses of Vidal being good. But they went with kind of that split to open, then they go with Vidal basically the rest of the game, and did perform well. I do want to note, if you're just like looking at the box score here, it was definitely more boom bust than like if you look at like the yards per carry, you look at the rushing yards, like, oh, is he busting off like 7, 8, 9, 10 yards every play? Not really. He had gains of 13, 19, 27, and 38. So that is awesome. And you love to see explosive runs. That's where a lot of fantasy production comes from. And also explosive runs are really important for NFL offenses. It's difficult to gain explosives on the ground. And so running backs that are able to do that do get more touches over time. Like it's worth having those kind of low end runs when you're capable of also having the big ones. But you also look at it and say, okay, 12 of his 21 touches gained 2 or fewer yards, and 11 of the 21 touches gained 1 or fewer yards. And that kind of goes to the point of like, he's probably not that good of running back. This offensive line is not that good. And so even in a matchup with the Dolphins, who are a really, really bad defense overall, even in a matchup like that, for, more than half of his touches are just getting completely stuffed for 0 or 1 yards, that's concerning because you don't play the Dolphins every week. And so if next week, those 4 carries that made up most of his production, if those get stuffed too, now we're looking at absolutely nothing. And again, you don't want to say like take away his 4 best carries and he wasn't good. Like I still want to point out he had 100+ yards. He had the touchdown. He clearly looked better than Haskins. So I would assume he's the lead guy. I just don't want people to think he was busting off, 5 yards every play. The vast majority of his touches were going absolutely nowhere. But when you're playing the Dolphins, that's going to matter as much. It's also not going to matter in week 9 when we play the Titans. So that's a good spot. But next 2 matchups, Colts, Vikings, both strong defenses. I don't know. Obviously, I haven't done the week 7 projections yet. I'll be doing those tomorrow. I would imagine he still ends up in that general like 20 to 30 range. I just don't know. I haven't looked at him yet where exactly he's going to land, but it's not like he's some slam dunk play moving forward. It's also not amazing when before the game, we're getting all this reporting that the Chargers are looking to trade for a running back. So understand the risk. I think a lot of people are going to spend a number 1 claim on him, maybe up to like 20, 30% of the fab. And I haven't like pinpointed exactly what I'm going to recommend for the fab. Right now, I think it's around 20%. I think I would be fine spending the 1. But I'm a little hesitant in suggesting both of them just because they trade for someone, he's cooked, and he could easily go out there next week not have those explosives, and people are like, oh yeah, it's still somewhat of a committee. Maybe Nyheim Hines is kind of used a little bit more in the future. Like, there are still chances here to where, like, that was the best game. That probably is the best game he'll have all season. I'll say that. And that was the only game we can start him rest of the season. Like, there's a chance that happens. But because the other outcome happens, what if they're like, you know what? We like Vidal. We're not going to trade for anyone. We're going to ride him. And we have maybe the next month and a half where we're not going to have Martin Hampton because he's going to miss more than a month. Maybe you have Vidal as the lead back. So there's just so much variance here that it's difficult to suggest something fully. But I'm worried because as soon as they trade for someone, it's over. And they're not going to trade for someone that's like horrible that they're not going to use. When they trade for someone, we should expect that running back, unless they're really good, to at least get like 30 to 40% of the workload as like a baseline. And if they're a very good running back, to completely take over Vidal to make him worthless. So a lot of outcomes here that aren't great, but still clearly the number one option this week. That's the high end for running back. The other options, we've mentioned two of the three, Tyjae Spears, Bam Knight, and Kendre Miller. I would say they're probably the go-tos after that. You're probably only spending anywhere from 1% to 3% of your fab on these guys. I wouldn't spend a 1, 2, or 3 claim on them. I might not even spend a number 4 claim. But Tyjae looked healthy last week. We talked about last week being like, he had the 25% of snaps in his first game back. When you have players returning from IR, returning from, a high ankle sprain that had him out for 2 months, of course, they're not going to go out there in the first week and have this insane workloads. But we saw him jump from 25% up to 59% this last week. Looks healthy. I believe he caught 4 passes. He looked good. And you got to think, okay, upside not really there on the Titans. This nukes the value of Pollard. Like, if Pollard, it already was barely being used in the receiving game, and now you've got Spears as a passing down back. No value for Pollard, but also not that much value for Spears. It's more so you'd be rostering him because if he looks this good, maybe you've seen injury to Pollard to where like maybe now you have Spears as a feature back, but Spears would actually be better than Pollard was because they'll throw him the ball a little bit more. I don't think you should really be holding out hope that like the Titans end up being a good offense this season. So that's not really the out. The out is more the injury. So high upside handcuff. Maybe someone in a full PPR league. Tyjae Spears still talking about here. Maybe someone in a full PPR league that can get you through bye weeks. Maybe you've got all your running backs out. You just need someone to get you like 7 points in full PPR. I think that's a possibility. If the Titans are going to be trailing every single game this season, you're going to get a lot of Tyjae Spears games. And if he can rack up 3-4 receptions in a lot of these, maybe that gets you by. As for Bam Knight, we did get reporting Sunday morning for him as well that he would be starting. And he did end up with more carries than Michael Carter, but it was pretty much a 50-50 split. I think Bam Knight played 7% more snaps. He had 1 more touch. That could honestly be randomness. He did score the touchdown, so he got the goal line touch. That was nice to see. But honestly, both of them look pretty bad. Brissett did inject some life into the Cardinals' offense. I hope they just start Brissett rest of the season. Like, I just don't think Kyler can be using this offense. I think that like he's probably still a starting quarterback in the NFL. And I think a really good coach could actually utilize him well. The problem is the Cardinals don't have that. And he's just like incapable of like locking in on the top pass catchers, incapable of like being consistent and like having the correct read. Brissett has been in the league for a while, not a crazy amount of time, but he's been in the league long enough, and he's produced at times with very, very low end talent to where I trust him to run the Cardinals offense more. So we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, they get the Packers and then a bye. So, like, even if you had Bam Knight, you had Michael Carter, and you're like, oh, I'm helping, like, my roster here, them, like, getting through bye weeks and stuff. Well, they're going to be the ones on bye in week 8. And are you really starting either one of them against the Packers next week? I mean, that's bold, right? Starting either one of them. Then for Kendre, continues to get, like, 9 to 11 touches. Not much work in the receiving game. You're not pumped about that because the Saints aren't that good. If you're not catching passes, even if you get 10 carries, even if you're efficient, and you get 50 rushing yards on that, that's 5 points. Like, even in full PPR, it's 5 points. That's not going to get it done. And then you're like, oh, well, he might get goal line over Kamara. Well, not with Taysom Hill back. 1 carry for 1 yard and a touchdown for Taysom Hill last week. So the only out seems to be an injury or a trade for Kamara. The problem with that is the reporting currently is that Kamara doesn't want to be traded. So the team approached him, was like, hey, we kind of want to trade you. Are you okay with that? And he's like, nah, like I want to finish my career as a Saint. I don't think he's going to play that much longer. I don't think he retires this season, but that's like an outcome that could occur. You could still have the out though of like, even if they don't trade Alvin Kamara, if he's just like, I want to stay on the team, I want to be used at least a little bit each week as like a passing down back, they could still shift more workload over to Kendre Miller like late in the year, like weeks 12, 13, 14, when they're completely out of it, they're tanking, and they just want to see like, because Kendre Miller's been good. Like the underlying stats on Kendre Miller this season have been phenomenal. He's forcing missed tackles at a really high rate. He's been playing really well. If they kind of just want to see like, can he be the lead back next season when we kind of like are in this rebuilding process, if they lean on him weeks 12 plus, there is some upside here. So I don't want to say that it's only a trade or only an injury. Kamara can still be on the team, not traded and healthy, and we could be using Kendre as like a low end running back too. So I think worth a stash, one of the better handcuffs. I have the new handcuff page that I'm going to update later today, basically just going over my thoughts on like who the most valuable handcuffs are, who the guys I'd want to be stashing are. And he is a good stash because he is talented and they could lean on him later in the season. At wide receiver, there's really nothing on the high end. I still believe that Luther Burden is an elite stash. This video is going to be posted, like 6-7 hours before the Monday night games. I still have no idea what the outcome, of course, of those games are going to be. I'm hoping that Luther gets the post by rookie bump. We have to be careful sometimes with the early season buys. When guys in the rookie season go on by in weeks like 10, 11, 12, you really see the post buy bump after that. When it's week 5, week 6, it's like still kind of early to where I wouldn't be shocked if Luther goes out there, has pretty much the same snap share, maybe like a 10% more snap share, like one more target than normal. And it's like, okay, we see the bump, but it's still a little bit early for him. So I wouldn't be shocked. But still, we have that dream that maybe DJ Moore's traded away. Maybe they want Luther Burden to be that number 2 wide receiver. I do think he passes Olamide Zaccheaus again. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think he can pass Zaccheaus tonight. I think he can end up working up to there too. And so long term, he could be a flex option for us. Just right now, he's a stash. You can't be playing him. After Burden, I do think there's just a massive list of players you could spend 1 or 2% of your fab on, or just see if no one wants them and then add them after that. I really wouldn't be using any sort of high-end claim on any of these players. But I would say my favorites that are on free agency in a lot of leagues in order are Jalen Coker, Alec Ayamanor, Josh Downs, Kendrick Bourne, Jaden Higgins, Darnell Mooney, Christian Watson, Booty or Pop Douglas in New England, and then Zay Jones or Michael Wilson on Arizona. Which one you go after depends on your personal take on these players, but also what you need. Do you need something more of like some long-term upside, or do you need something for right now? I would say in terms of long-term upside to potentially be, wide receiver 3, flex play, second flex play in a lot of leagues, like the double-digit weeks, so second half of the fantasy season. I'd say it's Coker, Downs, Jaden Higgins, Darnell Mooney, and Christian Watson. That entire list could end up being useless. Like every single player on that list could be someone that you never actually end up starting, but all those players are either on a high-end offense or have a chance to be like the number 2 pass catcher on their team. I think Coker was very close to returning this week, probably going to return this coming week. He will step right in for that wide receiver 2 spot. Again, when we have these injuries, this was a major, quad injury for Jalen Coker. That first week back, we're not starting Coker. We need to see him go out there, not get hurt, and then he'll ramp up in that second week. So we're not starting him right away, but he's going to be the number 2 wide receiver on this team. He had a great close to last season, a great camp this offseason. He's a good player. Maybe he can help, sustain drives a little bit more, but he will be number 2 behind Tetton. He will pass Xavier Legette. Downs, already the wide receiver 2 on the Colts. Great option. We've been talking about this for a few weeks now. If you've got buys week 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, you're in a full PPR league especially, he's going to be a great option to where the weekly ceiling isn't that amazing. But if you're just looking for someone to where you're not going to lose the week, 4 for 50, 5 for 60, stat lines like that in full PPR where you're like, just give me 10 full PPR points, still a floor because he's a wide receiver, but not so much where it's like he only scores 20 or 0 and the 0 comes like 70% of the time, right? Someone who's stable in full PPR that's just going to help you as a bye week fill-in. He's an awesome player for that. So I guess maybe less like like we kind of know what the upside is right now, less unknown upside. We do have some unknown upside in Jaden Higgins. He was the 32nd overall pick in the draft. Potential post-bye rookie bump. They went on bye this last week. Going into the bye, so the week before the bye, most targets on the season, most snap share on the season. He's someone that the, I guess, dynasty community was fairly split on. Some people saying, underlying stats weren't amazing in college, specifically getting open versus press man coverage. There's just some things where he wasn't a locked in prospect to where some of these guys, some of these rookies were we knew they were going to be productive in the NFL. We didn't know 100% Jaden Higgins. So I don't want to say oh, he's a rookie that was drafted early, coming off bye. He's going to be amazing rest of season. There are still problems with the Texans offense. There are still unknowns with him as a prospect. But he was still a high-end prospect. He does still have a lot of upside in fantasy. And if he actually wins the role as the number 2 wide receiver on the Texans, that will come with a lot of weekly ceiling. And no one really talks about him right now, especially, again, if you've got buys coming up. If he can start to break out and be an every down role in this team, there is volume here to be had. And it's not like he has to pass a crazy amount of talent ahead of him. I sort of doubt that Christian Watson is going to be someone to rely on this season, but every report has been that the recovery is going great for Christian Watson, that he's very close to returning. And so if you want some upside, maybe he goes out there, because it's the Packers. It's a really good offense. Maybe he goes out there and he passes, maybe Jaden Reed doesn't return this year. Maybe he passes, Wicks, and you've got Golden and Dobbs kind of as those more consistent wide receivers, and Christian Watson is taking the lid off and he ends up being good as a deep threat role, kind of like a Jameson Williams light, I guess. That's the upside there. I would say more so in I wouldn't go to him in an 8 or a 10 team league, but 12 team leagues with 3 wide receiver spots, maybe 14 team leagues on. He'd be a decent stash right now. As for the other names on the list, you've got Alec Imanor, Kendrick Bourne, Pop Douglas, Booty, Zay, Michael Wilson. I don't necessarily think any of them have a lot of long-term upside, but they could be useful in the coming weeks if you've got buys and injury. Ridley, hamstring injury. I feel like if you leave a game with a hamstring injury, you don't return the next week. I don't know. That just seems like something that typically occurs. So I wouldn't expect Ridley next week. Who knows? Maybe it could be a long-term injury for him. That leaves Ellick running routes with the corpse of Tyler Lockett and then Chimere DK. He doesn't have high-end target competition. They're going to be trailing. He can rack up a decent amount of targets, and he's been someone we've been high on kind of this season. Kendrick Bourne, exactly 142 receiving yards in back-to-back weeks. Obviously, if Kittle and Pearsall both come back next week, and then if Purdy also comes back and he doesn't have Mac Jones targeting him every play, if those happen, you're not starting Kendrick Bourne. But what if all 3 of them need one more week? You've got another week of using Bourne. I think he's kind of worth a stash until we know, that these guys are definitely coming back. Also, Jawan, it was kind of again, that first week back from injury, takes a week to ramp up, then he'll be good to go after that. So I don't think Bourne is probably going to be a play this coming week, but again, we don't know with injuries. It could just take another week for some of these guys. Booty, Pop Douglas. It's very points chasey. You're probably not starting them, but I would say in deeper formats, they're playing the Titans this week. They should score into the upper 20s. Chance they score into the 30s. Pop Douglas should have had 2 touchdowns. I have no idea where that first touchdown was taken, or the second touchdown was taken off the board, just a phantom offensive pass interference call when there was absolutely nothing on a completely different player. So that was weird. But Booty has touchdown upside. He's got big play upside. Pop Douglas not playing very many snaps. So again, it's very points chasey with these guys. But if you absolutely needed someone in a deeper league, there's going to be touchdowns scored against the Titans. So they're options. And then for the Arizona wide receivers, Marv has a concussion, probably going to miss this next week. I'd assume usually when players have a concussion, they miss 1 week. And so if you had to use Zay, you had to use Michael Wilson, they'd be fine. But again, as we said with Bam Knight, they're playing the Packers, which isn't great. At tight end, mostly the names we've talked about. Fannin, I continue to talk about long-term upside here. Honestly, he was great this week. I unfortunately benched him. That might get me the loss. But he's coming off a great game. He continues to look really good when they use him. And the kicker is, if they trade Njoku and they go with this youth movement, he is going to see a ton of targets in the second half of the season, and he's already with Njoku on the field seeing a decent amount of targets. If Njoku is traded away, he's like a mid-range tight end 1 in the second half of the year. That's a lot of upside that should not be on free agency in as many leagues as he is. I'm also hopeful in Colston Loveland. Again, I'm more hopeful in Luther Burden. I think if you had to stash one of them, and you had a chance before the game to stash one of them, it would be Luther Burden. But I feel like people still overlook Colston Loveland. I know he's been bad to start the year, but he's a rookie tight end that's played 2 full games, and then he had 6 snaps in a third game before getting hurt. Then he missed a game, then they went on bye. He has not played very much in the NFL so far. And in that game he got hurt, he had 3 targets on 6 snaps. There was a chance that was his breakout game. Then he suffers the injury. I don't actually even know if he's playing tonight. He's still questionable, but there is a chance he goes out there, completely takes over as their tight end 1, commands 6 or 7 targets. And even on 6 or 7 targets, if he gets that and he looks good, he is going to be someone we're definitely wanting long-term rest of the season. Again, the upside here is if DJ Moore were traded away, which I don't necessarily think is going to happen. I think it's a possibility, but I don't know that it's going to occur. But even if that doesn't occur, that's more of the Luther Burden out for Loveland. He just has to pass Clement, which is not going to be very difficult to do. So I think there's a lot of upside here. I think people forget that he was taken 10th overall. It's not looking great that they took him over Tyler Warren right now, but they clearly value him very heavily, and he definitely can have a breakout in the upcoming weeks. It was also nice to see Evan Engram looking healthy. He got banged up to start the year. He wasn't that involved, so most people dropped him if they drafted him, but 7, 6, and 6 targets over the last 3 weeks. I think personally last week was this past week that just happened yesterday. I think that was the healthiest he looked all year. He looked very good. He was getting them out of jams on drives. Still fairly limited upside in Denver, not because Denver's a bad offense or has a bad quarterback. Neither of those are the case, but there's so many players that they spread the ball around so much that the weekly ceiling isn't typically there unless they fall way behind, which they're also not going to do that many times. But if he looks this healthy rest of season, he might be able to rack up 4, 5, maybe 6 receptions every week. And if you can rely on a tight end to get 4 or 5 catches every week on a decent offense, meaning there's touchdown upside each week with that, then that has upside to where it's he probably shouldn't be available in as many leagues as he is. Other 2 options are Michael Mayer and Aranda Gadsden, 2 completely different players for different roles on your team. If you have Brock Bowers, you should have Michael Mayer. I know he's been injured, so you might not have him right now, but it's very easy to just roster both of them, play Mayer now every single week that Bowers misses, and then as soon as Bowers comes back, play Bowers over Mayer. That's just how you should be playing it if you have Brock Bowers. And then Gadsden, honestly, I'm excited about him. And I another player that I just don't see people really talking about, snap shares by week, 0%, 0%, 25, 47, 54, and then 75% last week. Very clearly ramping up. Obviously, the 7 targets kind of came because Quentin Johnston wasn't on the field. But the man had 8 targets, actually. 7 receptions on 8 targets for 68 yards. Unfortunately, adds a fumble in there. We'll see if he kind of has I don't think he's going to get benched because of that, but they don't like fumbles, coaches in the NFL. But he looks good. This was a player that they were talking about a lot in the offseason, being he's used kind of up the seam. He's used as a receiving tight end. And if he ever was on the field a lot, this is a great offense to where you are not worried about Gadsden. You are not worried about the tight end. You are so focused on these wide receivers that as a defense that you cannot be focusing a lot on the tight ends. And so if any one of them started to break out and have a good target share, we're going to be excited. And the other tight ends are Will Dissly, Conklin, Tucker Fisk. Do we really think that long-term this team is focusing on Dissly, Conklin, and Fisk? No. They think Gadsden can be their long-term receiving tight end. And again, these snaps are clearly trending up. The targets are clearly trending up. I don't think in an 8 or a 10 team league you're considering him at all. I think in a 12 team league, he's still more of a stash. 14 on, he should definitely be rostered in all of them. But in a 12 team league, if you want to stash him and just see if Quentin comes back and Aranda still plays 80, 85% of the snaps and still commands 6, 7 targets, that is worth starting. Tight end is not a very deep position. There's a lot of variance there. And this is a good enough offense to where I want to see if the usage sticks. But if it does, when Quentin's back, He's going to be a very exciting prospect rest of the season. As for quarterback streaming, your two options are Purdy and Sam Darnold. I think a lot of people drop Purdy after the missed games, but he should return, if not week 7, week 8. Once he does return, he's probably going to have Kittle and Pearsall back, Jawan more ramped up. Ayuk's, I don't know if Ayuk returns until week like 13, 14, 15. Like, it's going to be very late for his return. But the point is, the 49ers are slowly going to get a little bit more healthy on offense. And so if someone dropped Purdy, you should be adding him. And then Darnold, tough matchup this week against Houston, plus Houston coming off bye. But Sam Darnold has been awesome lately. He's been the quarterback 10, 18, 2, and then he's currently the quarterback 8, at least, heading into the Monday night games. He'll probably drop a little bit. But in 3 of the last 4 weeks, he'll be a top, probably at worst, 10 quarterback. That's pretty nice, right? That's someone who's, clicking in the offense. The scheme is clearly better than it was last season. So he's probably going to grade out as a high-end quarterback 2 this week and is available in 50% of leagues. Then finally, defense streaming, as always, just check the projections tomorrow. But how I'm seeing it right now is 2 at the top are the Chiefs versus the Raiders and the Patriots at the Titans. I think every single week, no matter who the defense is, you just stream them against these 2 teams. I don't care if it's like a really bad defense. These offenses are so bad. They're letting up so many sacks and they have so many turnover-worthy plays that you just have to play every single defense that goes against them. So Chiefs, Patriots, clearly the top end. I'd be willing to spend honestly 3 or 4% of my fab to get them. After them, it's probably just 1% of your fab, or just wait and see if you can add them after waivers clear. But it's Bears versus the Saints, Seahawks versus the Texans. Although, again, Texans coming off bye, I don't love that. But Seahawks do have a good defense. It is at home where they play better, and Texans' offensive line is bad. Browns versus the Raiders, and then Rams at the Jaguars. Again, none of those are as good of options as the Chiefs or Patriots. I'd be willing to spend, again, 3-4% of your fab to get Chiefs, Pats, 1%, or just add for the other 4. But again, just look at the projections on Tuesday. Defense projections don't typically change as much over the week as skill position players do. So good luck to everyone who needs a miracle tonight. I need a nuke from Jayden Daniels. I need a 40-point performance from him. So hopefully he can bust off a 70-yard touchdown run or something. I'll be back on Wednesday to go over my top trade targets, Thursday to go over the week 7 rankings, Friday to go over my favorite underdog plays this week. Please subscribe on YouTube or Spotify if you are new here. But that, my friends, will do it for this one, and thank you all for watching.